Hello everyone, this is Lord Cucumber. Okay, so it's time for a little bit of an update and a devlog, sort of in one video. First of all, for those of you waiting for videos about gaming stuff that I'm doing, I'm gonna get to that as soon as possible. There's a couple of reasons why I haven't been able to record. Mainly because I've really dove into coding in these past few days, and also now that I've got a small flu, so it might not be tonight. So that's that, if for anyone watching this in 2018. Okay, that's that. Just to continue on the previous video, my next basically challenge was to generate a path between the rooms. And while I thought I had a very good way of doing that and coded eventually, I made a capital mistake. Now, it's not going to kill the game or change anything, it's just going to slow things down somewhat. What I did was basically assume, which I guess isn't weird, that everything inside a list is not just readable but also writable. And in C# that's not the case. In most languages, I guess that's not the case. If you put something in a list, it's got certain attributes, certain settings. If it's an object, it has certain variables set to certain numbers or states. And it doesn't actually update if you tell it to. Even though the code says it's perfectly fine, it doesn't work that way. What it does is update the reference. So basically you have the object that's in the list, which is the original, and whatever you get from the list, even if you read it, is a reference to that object, not the actual object. So if you change something in that reference, it doesn't actually update the list, if that makes sense. Now, how is this a problem? As you may or may not have noticed, when I run this, and you can see that basically you see a lot of rooms. You see a room. Basically, you see 5 rows of rooms at the top, and then 3, basically 3 rows down. 5 columns, basically, and 3 rows down. So each of those areas where there's a room, small, big, doesn't matter, is basically another square, another sector, where things happen. These sectors are made when I generate the level, and it sets basically whether or not it's a wall, a floor, or a rock. That's going to be the tile inside the sector at a certain position. Henceforth you get all these rooms in different shapes and sizes. That's randomized. Now what I was making was basically a script that ran through all the rooms, made connections between the rooms, making the tiles that you see that are now W's and R's between those rooms into F's, basically into flooring. That was the theory, at least. The problem is that as it's all set in a list, it doesn't actually change the original object, and the original object draws itself. That's how I coded it. I made sure that you can draw the actual thing by calling it in the draw method, and it basically says, okay, we've got an override of the draw method in the tile, and the tile draws itself. It doesn't actually do that centralized, it does that by itself, which goes from whatever object you set in that reference or in that position in the list. Since you can't change the object unless you remove it and put a new one back, which is very likely the solution, it doesn't update. It just stays this, like so. It doesn't. In the background, all kind of stuff happens, and then the game says, or the program says, "Well, I'm going to ignore that because it's not gonna do much." So right now we're sort of back where we were. Oh, that's not good. What the hell? Okay. Okay. Well, there might be some other issues as well. Look. How is that a thing? Okay, I might have to revert to a previous build, looks like. Anyway, okay, that's an interesting bug I haven't seen yet. I've been messing around with it, and I've probably found a way to fix it. But it might take a little while before I have that fix. As I have to basically change two things. I have to make sure that the sections, those big squares, are replaceable. And I have to make sure that the tiles are replaceable. Now the latter is not that much of a problem because they're on a list and the actual sequence in the list doesn't matter. The tiles basically get piled into that list as a separate thing for the entire screen, basically everything you see here. So that's not much of a problem. What is, however, a problem, and is a pretty major problem, is that the sections, well, they contain the tiles, and they actually are problematic if you move them around in the list. I'm not sure if the bug that we were just witnessing is part of that problem, but it might actually be the case. So why are we able to move there and there? That's just weird. Okay, I may have to have a look at that. Wow, okay, interesting. But as I'm reverting, it doesn't really matter. Anyway, I've broken several things trying to fix this. It's gonna be sort of a double challenge for me to fix, and I have to somehow figure out how to make sure that the section part isn't influenced too much by moving it around, moving sections around. Not that it would matter really. I mean, obviously, if you're generating the level, you're not seeing what's happening on the screen. Like the small room in the middle might be swapped for the big room next to it, and nobody would notice. Right? I mean, and the actual generation of hallway tiles would still work technically. So because that happens after that has been taken care of. So I might be able to just do that and have no problems with that whatsoever. But then we come to the point of persistence. I'm going to have to make this persistent at some point, making sure that we can have it like a save game function. And man, then it really becomes interesting. I mean, how am I going to do that? Am I going to just record the tiles and say, okay, put the tiles back in position on the screen and forget about the whole generation of sections? Probably, since it's in its own list, it might be the only thing I can do. It might actually be part of the solution, ignoring the sections altogether. But yeah, so that's sort of the challenge before me, if you will. And obviously, if I just wanted to connect all the rooms, I could just hard code it. That wouldn't be so difficult. I could hard code it and just generate the sections and say, okay, every section gets an exit towards the other adjacent rooms, basically adjacent on the X and Y axis, and nowhere else, not to the edges, not to the top, nowhere, just there. That's perfectly possible, but it's also very boring. You want sort of randomization, and that's what I coded. That's what I built. And obviously, I would love to have that in my level, at least to make it a little bit more interesting. The idea is that eventually, when this level is done, it's sort of a template for the other levels, as in the way it's structured, not the way it's filled out. That you get a way that no level looks the same, and you can actually cover part of the level as you're walking around in darkness, for instance. So that you can overlay that and walk around with your character. The character right now is set in the lower left room. I'm going to put it, if possible, in the center of the screen, because in the center of the screen there's always a room, so you could start technically in the center of the screen. And then move all, and that's a thing as well, move all of the tiles more or less offset to that, because I don't want the player to actually start in the center of the screen. Basically, I want your character to be visible in the center of the screen, or maybe one to the left if I make a UI to the right, for instance. with like a paper doll kind of thing. So the viewport would only be 3 by 3 in this particular setup of visible rooms at one given time. But that would mean that if we put the character in there, we might have to, if we centralize view, we might have to mess around with the tiles. So that's a bit of a thing as well. And that also is dependent on where a section is at. So, oh man, I've really got into trouble this time. But not to worry, I will fix it. I will fix it, and I will very likely have a game running, or some form of game running, in a few months' time. I suspect, if I persist, and I'm a persistent guy. Obviously, it's going to have monsters, it's going to have stairwells, it's going to have secret rooms. As far as I'm concerned, it's going to have all kinds of adversaries, strong and weak. Each room will have an encounter or something fun to do. I'm not sure yet. I mean, it's also sort of a proof of concept, a tech demo, if you will, of what I want to code when I get serious. And I've learned from this. There's so many mistakes in this build. Things that I've done is absolutely 100% correct as well. Things that I didn't think I could do, I did. And that's pretty cool. I mean, I really like that. But one of the things, obviously, is not having those dynamic sections. That's a thing. That's a problem. Anyway, I've taken up enough of your time. I'm going to leave it here. Please leave a like and or comments in the section below. And there will be videos up this week. Possibly another gaming video. That's what I'm striving to do. It might not be Gravity, Tank Warfare. Although I do want to record that, but it takes a while, it takes a lot of effort, and I'm just not feeling up to it right now. Physically, I'm a little bit of a wreck. Mentally, I'd love to, but, well, you know. Anyway, that's it for this update. I hope you look forward to whatever comes next, because I will not give up on this. This is my thing. This is my baby, and I really would like to see it running very soon indeed. So, stay tuned for that. Bye-bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you ever so much for watching. Please consider leaving a like and or comment. And please also subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thank you again. Cheers.